What's up, guys and gals? Welcome back to the Avarice Podcast. I've got my cup of coffee here, I've got my bong at the ready, and I'm ready to dig in and rank the Halloween franchise today. So I want to preface this by saying that these are all my opinion. This is the order, basically, that I would want to watch the movies in, and kind of how close they stay to the core, the original. That's kind of my criteria, so to speak. So don't go getting a sandy vagina or all butthurt because I put your favorite one in the last spot. Or you're gonna live. Rub some dirt on it. You'll be okay. It's a ranking of a make-believe storyline. Get a hold of yourself. Okay. So, now I'm going to take a ceremonial hit to commence the official beginning of the podcast, and then we will dig into this list I've got here. Y'all can sharpen your dicks and get prepared to inevitably be disappointed, even though I just tried to soften the blow a little bit preemptively. No matter what, you're going to disagree with some of what I say, and that's fine, right? Like, different strokes for different folks. Variety's the spice of life. That's why we have these conversations. That's why there's things that are different. If everything was made for me, it'd be kind of a boring world. For you guys. Okay, so let's get the disappointment underway. I'm starting, so at this point, when I'm recording this, there are 11 Halloween movies. So I'll be starting at number 11 and working my way up to number 1. And of course, through process of elimination, it's going to become fairly obvious what remains as we work our way through this list. So, without further ado, first on the list, I have Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. Ooh, so let that sink in. Kind of saturate you a little bit. So, I basically have one huge reason for this, and that is that it's not a Michael Myers movie. So, using the criteria that I kind of laid out before, how interested am I in watching it, and how close does it stay to the original? This one gets a 0 out of 10 on both accounts. I've never seen Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, which gives you a inkling into how interested I am in it. Like, I've never even had a morbid curiosity to see what's in there. I just don't give a shit. And it is nothing, it has not even a shred of the original woven into it. It actually has a commercial on the TV for the original Halloween film in Halloween 3. And I only know this by watching and reading stuff about the Halloween franchise. I've never seen it with my own eyes. But the fact that there is a commercial for the Halloween movie in Halloween 3 means that the Halloween movie is fiction in Halloween 3. They do not exist in the same storyline, the same realm. They're not in the same Avengers Endgame universe. So, that for me is basically why I'm throwing it here at the bottom, because I don't even really consider it a Halloween movie. It was really a travesty that it gets thrown in there. I mean, it makes for a good, bar story, good conversation. It makes it unique. But it's a huge blemish, and it requires so much explanation. What they've done with the names in this franchise, if you aren't balls deep in it and you just try to kind of glance at it, you could really fuck yourself up. There's 3 different Halloweens, there's 2 different Halloween 2s, there's a Halloween 3 that is totally divergent from every other movie in the franchise. It's kind of a mind fuck. So part of the reason that I wanted to do that also is that what we effectively have left are 10 movies with Michael Myers. So this will, from this point forward, be a ranking of Michael Myers movies. I originally was just going to set out to rank just Michael Myers movies, and I was like, fuck it, we'll do all the Halloween ones, and I'll just put Halloween 3 at the bottom because I don't care about it at all. So I'm sure that there are some people who are upset by that. I know it has kind of this weird cult following at this point. A lot of people think it's misunderstood, but as far as the merits of being a Halloween movie, it has none. Once the first one came out and you coined the term, or you stamped the name Halloween on the title, and Michael Myers was the leading character or the main villain, that became what Halloween movies are about. So 3 deep, you can't decide to totally change it up like that. If Season of the Witch was the first Halloween movie and then they changed it up and Michael Myers became added in afterwards, then we'd have a different conversation on our hands. Which, kind of like you do with Friday the 13th. Friday the 13th is carried by Jason. He is the cornerstone of that franchise. But he was just an idea. He was a drowned kid in the original. The concept of him being a killer wasn't even considered by the original writers. So that is another weird case. But I don't want to get too far off track, of course, because we're talking about Halloween here. So I don't really have too much else to say about Halloween 3 besides I'll call you Monday. It's just, maybe if I had seen it I would have more to say, but again, maybe if at some point there's an overwhelming demand and people actually are calling for me, asking me to watch it to get my opinion on it, then maybe I'll do it. But as far as sitting down and contributing 2 hours of my own time to it for no reason, I'm not interested in that. Anyway, I'm done shitting on Halloween 3. I'm sorry if you love it. Again, you'll get over it. Rub some dirt on it. Get a lolly. Okay, so moving forward now, we will have the 10 movies that have Michael Myers in them. Starting at the bottom, number 10. I doubt I'll get much argument on this. Halloween Resurrection. This is just such a post Scream saturation, MTV era, burgeoning reality TV clusterfuck of a mess. Like, so H2O, which I'll get to in the ranking later, but it's relevant for this, came out right on the heels of Scream 1. And Scream 1 was a major injection of popularity for horror. It really gave the genre a boost, and it created the demand for more content like that, and as a result there was a bunch of pretenders and a bunch of knockoffs, and we got a lot of mediocre horror movies thereafter. Urban Legends comes to mind. I Know What You Did Last Summer comes to mind. Those are actually a couple of the better ones. But you get my drift. They struck a nerve, and not that movie studios are so much in the interest of giving you what you want, but they're in the interest of making money. So when there's a nerve struck like that, you're going to have a market boost for at least a short period of time, depending on how well you can maintain it. So you have all these movies coming in and capitalizing on it. H2O was one of those. H2O was actually a decent entry, though. So, anyway, years after that, as a follow-up to H2O, we have this hunk of shit, Resurrection. Everybody's kind of getting tired of horror movies at this point. Like I said, the word saturated is really the best term I can think of. You've had enough of it. You're full. You couldn't. It's like the difference between seeing a commercial for food when you're starving and seeing a commercial for food when you just ate. Seeing a commercial for food when I'm full makes me want to throw up. And so it's a right time, right place situation. What are people's appetites like? And I think that Resurrection was forced out to try to make some money and capitalize on this rejuvenation in horror. And it came at a time when people's appetites were not at their peak. And I don't know that it even matters if their appetites would have been at their peak, because the movie itself just sucks so bad. So let's dig. The first thing that they kind of do is the revisionist history with the ending of H2O, which apparently they were planning on doing the whole time. I heard that Jamie Lee Curtis found out halfway through H2O that they were planning on doing this change up, and it kind of took the wind out of her sails. So since there was so many years of a gap in between the two, I figured that was because they were trying to work out the kinks and figure out what they were going to do. But according to some stories I've heard, they had this idea back in 96, 97 the whole time. So they show us that cutscene where the Michael crushes the paramedic's larynx, puts him in the mask and suit, and sneaks off. And then Jamie ends up beheading, Laurie ends up beheading an innocent man. So she's locked away. The opening scene is actually pretty decent in that loony bin. There's the guy who's obsessed with all the serial killers. He's walking around wearing the John Wayne Gacy mask. Laurie Strode looks crazy. She's being given pills and she's hiding them inside her Raggedy Ann doll. It's a decent build-up to it. But basically the cardinal sin I think they commit is that they have Jamie Lee Curtis in the movie, and that they kill her in a very anticlimactic kind of let-down way. In the first opening, just right off the jump, she dies. And it leaves us without a lot to wrap our arms around moving forward, because while the Michael isn't the worst, he's definitely not one of the best. So you can't really attach yourself to that and be like, oh my god, Michael looks so fucking cool, I'm just gonna watch the Michael scenes and jizz my pants over that. So we've got Busta Rhymes, which is just fucking outrageous. Apparently it tested well. The initial cuts tested well, so they went back and added more Busta Rhymes into it. And watching the movie, it seems to me like he must have written his own fucking dialogue. It's the corniest, just machismo, fake tough guy shit I've ever seen. He watches Kung Fu Theater and how somehow he can kick Michael's ass. The way that they allow the Michael character to be manipulated for the sake of building up this Busta Rhymes character is unforgivable. They let him treat Michael like a bitch. They let him order Michael around. The premise of the movie is that they're going back to the Myers house, some fucking 35 years after the original murder, to try to uncover hidden clues, as if a million Dick, Tom, and Harry douchebags haven't already covered that ground. They, of course, have to have the Motley Crue kind of... This was like the MTV generation. We were just getting into internet culture, but we weren't quite there yet. The internet hadn't really hit. This was more the reality TV kind of Road Rules era, Real World. So they tried to turn this into MTV Real World does the Myers house. And they send this motley crew, we got the black chef, and we got the burnout stoner, and then we got the slutty chick, but she subverts your expectations because she's also smart. And then we've got the quiet good girl, but she's the scream queen. And it's just... And then they are on this internet streaming thing, which the technology was not there at the time for them to pull this off in any meaningful way. And through their journey, they start finding all this bullshit. Then later you find out that that's all been planted for the sake of the TV show. None of it goes anywhere, which I guess is probably the only saving grace for it. This movie could really be totally scooped out of the franchise with an ice cream scoop. It does not add one fucking thing other than the fact that they killed Lori, which we've now overwritten. We're already that was their, if they hadn't killed Lori, they probably could have made it with a pass and gotten another follow-up sequel to try to correct their mistakes. But they killed Lori and they created a nothing of a plot movie after that. So we were really left with nothing when it was over to wrap our arms around. Nobody gave a fuck about anything that happened in that movie. You make Michael look like a bitch, and then he's like the only artifact, the only remnant of anything that resembles Halloween left over that we're supposed to care about. And you ruined him before that. Oh my god, the Happy Halloween, Mikey, or trick or treat, motherfucker, and like throwing wheel kicks. Oh my god. There's a lot of head scratching movies in the Halloween franchise. There's a lot of what the fuck decisions. There's a lot of goofy stories. But almost without question, Michael remains an intimidating character. He remains insurmountable, at least based off appearance. It seems like there is nothing you can do. He's just coming for you. So then when you have Busta Rhymes, who's just supposed to be this random internet TV producer starting Dangertainment, who watches Kung Fu theater, like I said, they don't show him training or anything. He doesn't seem to have a warrior's mindset. He's not reading the fucking Art of War. He's the one, after all these movies, he's the one who gets to whoop Michael's ass. Are you fucking kidding me? Like, this was the first, and up until the recent one, up until 2018, the only Halloween movie that I went and saw in theaters. And I left there so fucking disappointed. It felt like such a generic... It actually struck me like kind of like it would have served better as a Friday the 13th movie. It was more suited to a Jason type, because those Jason movies are more single serving. The lore and shit doesn't really connect. If you try to connect the dots, you're gonna end up scratching your head a lot. It doesn't fucking make sense. The fact that Jason even is at all in adult form doesn't make sense. So, shit, where was I going with that? Oh, and so if you plug Jason in instead of Michael in this situation and make it not the Myers house and put it out in the woods, you're good. But when you bring... So the way I would have done it is I don't think that this was an option, because I think they only had Jamie Lee Curtis available to shoot for one day. So if that's the case, then I would move her entire appearance to the end of the movie. I wouldn't advertise that she's gonna be in it at all. I would make an entire story autonomous of her, and I would have her come in at the end as kind of a climax, a wow factor for the audience, and then I would have her die. And no matter how much of a piece of shit it was before that, they would leave with that in their mind, and if you pulled it off right, you could still have some happy customers. But instead, they did this popcorn fart death at the end. We move into this contrived Myers house reality show situation. They make Michael look like a bitch. They don't build up their lead girl well enough. She just doesn't have the charisma. She doesn't have the it factor. They put all the shine on corny ass Busta Rhymes. And at the end, it's like you're holding a soft dick in your hand because you did too much coke. The other thing that I haven't mentioned yet that's horrible about this movie is the scene, the two Michael Myers, when Busta Rhymes is dressed up as Michael and they run into each other, and Busta Rhymes orders him around, not knowing that it's actually Michael, and Michael just plays along with it and listens to him. Like, they're changing core elements of what it is to be Michael Myers. They're turning him into a bitch. How big is the Myers house? He should have slaughtered all these kids with the fucking quickness. Anyway, at the end of the day, it's a steaming pile of trash. After doing commentary, reviewing it, I really have it indexed in my mind pretty well. I don't think I ever need to watch that fucking thing again. Like I said, it doesn't add or detract anything from the franchise. It's not the ultimate final chapter on Laurie Strode because we get her back in 2018. They didn't create a new protagonist in her stead that you could really attach yourself to and care about. They show Michael Myers opening his eye at the end of it, so I guess it's open-ended, but nobody cared because they made him look like a fucking asshole. And it killed that run. It killed the original run of the franchise. Or actually, that wasn't even the original run because that was a follow-up to H2O. But I guess it killed that stream, and the next thing we had to get was a remake. So that was a rather long rant on Resurrection. I apologize for that. That one just really pisses me off, especially because it was made in the modern era and they had a little bit of money to work with. It doesn't look like shit. It seems like they could have done a much better job, and it was just lazy and fumbled and mostly done for the sake of lifting Busta Rhymes' esteem. For some reason, they thought they had something going with this Busta Rhymes. LL Cool J's character in H2O is exponentially better than Busta Rhymes' character in Resurrection. It's not even a fucking question. And he was used way less. I think that the esteem of LL Cool J got raised more by H2O than Busta Rhymes did by Resurrection. Anyway, that's enough. Moving on. Number 9. I don't think I'm going to get much argument out of this one either. This is going to be fairly unanimous towards the bottom of the list for everybody. I'm trying to... Hold on just a second. I'm trying to unlock my phone and check recording time, and it's telling me that my fingerprint isn't working. Pisses me off. Anyway. So, coming in at number 9, I have Halloween 5. So, some people probably think that there's other movies that should be below that. Maybe they think it should be higher on the list. I'm not aware of a huge camp of people who are big Halloween 5 fans, but I may be misinformed. So I feel the need to have to... I'll address that later. Anyway, okay, so Halloween 5. It is, of course, a follow-up to 4, but with a lot of new bullshit added in. They really went off the rails. They started... So, the main glaring issues, okay? The mask is different. It doesn't look like it was even made with the same mold. It looks droopy, like somebody set it on a mannequin head in the sun and let gravity do its thing. He never tucks the fucking thing in, so that's what your eye catches. Every time you see Michael come on screen, you see that filleted fucking rubber neck sticking out. The portrayal of Michael, period, is pretty goddamn bad. The director told Donald Shanks not to do any homework, not to watch any of the previous movies. He wanted him to have no idea what Michael was supposed to actually look like, which is one of the most retarded things I've ever heard in my life. You are 5 movies deep into a franchise. Granted, number 3 doesn't really count, but you're 5 movies deep. People have certain expectations for this character. You just can't come in with basically an entirely different character. You could have put any outfit on that motherfucker and just made a generic movie. It was not necessarily a Halloween movie. It had some elements there, but it was so... from the way he holds the knife to no head cocking to the way he moves, it's just all wrong. At least they got a white mask on the motherfucker and some overalls, I'll give him that. But they even play around with him changing masks for no reason, and it doesn't seem to even have a motive or make sense. He cries. He takes his mask off. You can clearly see that he's Native American. He doesn't look anything like what Michael Myers is supposed to look like. This same movie kind of starts the Cult of Thorn thing, which is an Irish thing. Michael is Irish. Why does he look like he's Native American? He cries. Like, I sort of feel the need to defend this one over the next one. You'll see what my next pick was when we get there. But it's things like this where it kind of brings them onto a level playing field. So it's not lit great. It's not shot great. It doesn't really have any excellent kills in it. It's just, again, it's very close to a Friday the 13th movie. They make the actual Jamie, Danielle Harris, who's carrying over from part 4, they make her a mute. The one thing they did do that I agree with is they didn't run with her carrying on the mantle and being the killer. They wiped that off. But they made her a mute. She has this psychic connection to Michael. They give her the stuttering best friend, who in some cuts or at some points was supposed to be a BMX rider. Like, they had no idea. I swear to God, they were just doing cocaine and throwing darts at a dartboard with words on it and then deciding to shoot scenes based off those words. They kill Rachel for the sake of having Tina carry on that role as kind of the protector of Jamie, only to kill Tina shortly thereafter, when Tina was a worse character, horrible character. Nobody likes the Tina character. And Rachel had a nice arc going over the course of 2 movies. She was a carryover from 4. You kill her in the first act. That was one of the bigger fumblings writing-wise, in my opinion. My idea is that if you imagine that it's Tina that gets killed instead of Rachel, and then Rachel carries on for the rest of the movie, and then Rachel dies saving Jamie's life, that is an appropriate arc for Rachel, given where we started in 4, when she didn't want to call off her date with Grady to babysit, and she made Jamie feel like she was kind of a third wheel. You go for all the way from there to sacrificing herself for Jamie. That would have been really satisfying for people. You would have kept Rachel around, who she liked, and you would have avoided this Tina disaster. But that's not what they did, is it? No, because that would be too fucking sensible. Let's see, is there anything else that's dog shit about 5? It had, I want to say, one of the better endings, but they couldn't even get that right. They couldn't even call it a day, cut their losses, and walk home. The scene where they drop the chain on Michael and Loomis beats the shit out of him with the 2x4 until he basically hyperventilates and collapses on top of Michael, and it's like they're both dying together. That is one of the best endings in the entire franchise. It's really one of the only things that they got right in this movie. But they couldn't even end it there. Instead, we go to the jail where they have Michael on his knees in the jail cell, cuffed up and everything, and his mask is still on. He's wearing his mask in the fucking jail cell, and it's still not even tucked in. Halloween 5 has some funny parts that are memorable, like Cookie Woman, but it was so bad that it took a fan who probably had like a fucking cork board, or he had one of those bedrooms with pieces of yarn and thumbtacks all over the place trying to string shit together to try to make sense of it. And even then, he couldn't really do it justice. This thing started so many storylines that it never finished and had it going off in all these weird fucking directions. The only thing in that regard that kind of helped it is that back when it first came out and it had all these just random shit interjected into it that you couldn't figure out, you convinced yourself that in number 6 they would have, like, your eyes would see the glory of the coming of the Lord. Like, they would pull back the veil and all of a sudden the key would fit in the lock and everything would make sense. We were giving them too much credit, and obviously there is no them. There really is no one person or team of people that are in charge of this story. You could say the Akkads are, but they don't write it, and they're obviously don't have that firm of guidelines or aren't guiding it that much because of some of the results that we've seen. There's a lot of flexibility. Those margins are pretty close to the edge. So the idea that I don't know, they had hubris, I guess. They had too much confidence that they were going to get a follow-up movie after this piece of shit. So they just assumed they'd be able to wrap it all back around and make sense of it in the next one. Totally counting their chickens before they hatched and not considering that maybe they'd make such a pile of garbage that was going to be so abhorred critically and by the fans that they weren't going to get the opportunity to tell the rest of their story. That they was just going to be taken away from them, and then it's going to be somebody else's job to finish your story. And as is the case with so many of the sequels are written by a different person than the previous one was written by. So at the end of the day, it has a look and a feel reminiscent of Halloween 4. If you were drunk enough, you could probably get them confused for one another, as long as you didn't see like the Cookie Woman scene or something like that. It has the bones of Halloween 4, but it takes just about every misstep that you can, other than having Michael just straight up talk or something like that, which is going to be funny when I get to my next one. So I'm going to wrap that up for Halloween 5. And the next one we're going to get to is number 8, Halloween 2, Rob Zombie's version. So, for me, in this conversation of my opinion and my ranking of them, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 and Halloween 5 are closely linked because they were almost interchangeable. I was struggling with that decision, maybe more than any other two in the franchise. I was really struggling with if I was going to put Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 above Halloween 5. And ultimately, I decided to put Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 over Halloween 5. I'm going to move over to the patio here so I can have a cigarette. For a few reasons. Number 1, the opening scene in Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, that dream sequence in the hospital is so badass. That is everything that a Michael Myers movie should be. Excuse me. That's Rob Zombie at his best. The cinematography's great. The lighting's great. The acting is great. Tyler Mane going on fucking berserker mode in the hospital. It's like a shout out to the original Halloween 2, but it's so different that it's not even close to being a remake. It's just jizz in my pants. And then we get kind of a shit sandwich thereafter. But nonetheless, the movie is lit way better. Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 is lit way better than H5. It's shot way better. It's edited way better. The music is way better. The score is way better. The acting is way better. And the portrayal of Michael, separate from the mask issue, is better. Tyler Mane is a better Michael than Donald Shanks. You have that badass fucking Halloween party, which is one of the best single serving scenes. Like, if you were just going to show somebody a scene from a movie on YouTube, that fucking Halloween party in Halloween 2 is acceptable. It fits that bill. You got the band playing, you got the titties, you got the dude trying to crack wise on the mic, you got everybody dancing in their costumes, you got the Wolfman taking the slutty chick out to his van to get lucky. It's fucking awesome. It just the feel that Rob Zombie's able to create, even if you don't always like the feeling that he's making you feel, he's able to create feelings. He's able to make you want to be, I want to go to that fucking party. So those are all the elements to me that make Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 better than Halloween 5. Now, that just sounded like a dick-sucking sesh for Halloween 2. And I don't mean for this to be that at all. Of course, I have it ranked 8th out of 11. So it's the third worst Michael Myers movie. So its flaws are, it gets way too contrived and fucking confusing, and starts mixing like weird hallucination type shit into this movie way too early. We're too early in the franchise. We have one writer, one vision. We shouldn't be having to come up with these fucking bullshit tricks to get around our storytelling. That's maybe the part that pisses me off the most about the Rob Zombie iterations of Halloween, is that he had the opportunity to start off with the story clean, unadulterated, use the original as a model, and slow walk this shit out of this thing. Do it proper style. Give us all the Michael Myers we can handle. And instead, he goes off into the woods to fucking Hogwarts on the second movie and just shitting our Wheaties, all of us. So you've got the fucking mommy unicorn visions. You've got the half torn apart mask. The fact that he's never really wearing the mask at all. He's not even wearing the right outfit, really. He's got the hoodie and shit on. And the fact that he talks at the end. They ruined the Dr. Loomis character. Dr. Loomis is now like a fucking charlatan. He's trying to capitalize financially off of the fact that he was Michael's doctor. And they even kind of fuck up the Laurie Strode character. Given the context of their story and the time, the era it came out in, she kind of makes sense. That, to me, is one of the many acceptable results for a character after a trauma such as she experienced in the first Halloween. So the fact that it's different from any other final girl reaction we've seen in the Halloween franchise, to me, doesn't make it wrong. But the writing wasn't deep enough to pull it off. It was too surface level. It was too lazy. It was too vulgar. It was too much fucks and shits and cunts, and not enough expressing her authentic feelings and playing with this duality of, maybe am I psycho? Am I the victim? What's going on here in my head? Which is what I feel like he was trying to play with. Even going back to the ending of the first one. In the second one, Michael's like trying to team up with her. Like, she's going to be the new Michael, and Laurie and Michael are going to go off as the ambiguously gay duo and conquer the world. And that's not really... I guess it's a different direction. He fell into the trappings of the sister relationship, basically, which is what a lot of people feel like the main mistake in the history of the franchise was making Michael hell-bent on going after his sister and family. They feel like that's where everything went wrong. And so when Rob Zombie got the chance to change shit up, he didn't. He made it the exact same story, basically, except the buried lead, so to speak. The twist at the end is going to be that Michael hasn't been trying to kill her at all this entire time. He's just been trying to take her with him and reintroduce her to Mommy. Ugh, and I want it fucking sizzling hot! That impression is the only great thing I got from that. No, I'm just kidding. There are good things in that movie, but those are the faults, and those are the reasons that I can't... Kind of how I just got butthurt about the portrayal of Michael in number 5. The portrayal of Michael is the most important part of the movie. It really is. As long as that character is there and it's what we expect from him, we'll put up with a lot of bullshit around it. There's movies that are higher up on this list, and it's not because they're better made, it's because Michael is better. So even though it's Tyler Mane, and he's this badass giant motherfucker, he looks like Kane back in the WWE Attitude Era. Even though you have that, when you make him wear half a mask, and he's walking around in a hoodie, and you Rob Zombie-fied him with his beard and his long hair, and then later you have him talk, you've committed most of the major sins that one can commit when creating Michael Myers on the silver screen. Like, other than having him get his ass whooped by Busta Rhymes, there's not a lot more left on the table for how to fuck this guy up. And the hallucinations, killing for Mommy, need a reason to work my wife back into the script. It's just so contrived, and he tries to go to this place, this ethereal fucking mystical place in his movies that he thinks is so profound, and nobody gets it. It doesn't make sense. It's just shoved in there. So that is basically my thoughts on that particular film. So that was number 8, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. We're going to move on up to number 7. Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers. So this one is probably the one where we're going to start getting people upset with the rankings. I'm sorry, folks. It's just the way I feel. If you're a few years older than me, I bet you have this higher on your list. I think that in the 90s, we had a younger or an older group that were in kind of middle school, early high school age when Halloween 6 hit, and I think we've got a group of people that were around that age when H2O hit, and I think that as a result of that, you have the people who were that age when 6 came out, they like 6 better. The people who were that age when H2O came out, they like H2O better. I really think that if you took a poll, you would see that that's the trend. So I would say that if you are 35 or older, you probably like Halloween 6 better. And I would say that if you are younger than 34, you probably like H2O better. I could be totally off base on that, but I'm going to go ahead and guess that's the case. And if you couldn't extrapolate based off of the clues I just gave you, the fact that I am in the H2O category, since this low on the ranking is when I'm giving you Halloween 6, I just spelled it out for you. Okay, so I digress. Halloween 6 comes in at number 7 on the list for many reasons. For one, it feels super dated to me. They tried to go with this modern rock feel, and it felt modern at the time, but as a result, now you're like, oh, this is the grunge era Halloween. It just reeks of grunge era. The mask is one of the better masks. We've got George Wilbur returning after not being in number 5. He's a bit dumpy, but it's not horrible as far as the portrayal of Michael goes. But this is a fan script written by Daniel Ferrens, and basically what he attempted to do was take all the shit from the past. Because you know how us our fans are. We try to make sense of the lore and the canon more than the creators do. Let's be honest. We care about it more. So when you have a fan who knows front to back the lore of the Halloween franchise, and I'm going to tell you right now, he read the novelization of the original several times because his script is heavily influenced by that. I haven't seen him admit to that, but I can just tell. So he's trying to take the Man in Black, all this fucking shit, and shove it into a nice little neat package that makes sense. And some people bought it and went with it, and I didn't. I hate the fucking Cult of Thorn idea. I hate the Man in Black idea. I hate the idea that Michael isn't the singular evil. I don't like him being controlled. I don't like him being on somebody's team. I don't like him transferring evil. I don't like any of that shit. I don't believe in curses or magic. How about it's scarier for me if he's just a dude in a mask who kills people. Okay? The original script, Michael rapes the Jamie character, his niece, and produces a baby, only to then try to make the baby the final sacrifice. I know that didn't make it into the final cut, but the baby is in the final cut, and they never address who the father is. And in the producer's cut, you see that it's Michael. So in my opinion, Michael is still the father in the other cut. There are horrible editing issues. They were made worse once we went from the producer's cut to the theatrical cut. They cut out some of their character development and some of their exposition scenes that help other scenes make sense in the sake of beefing up the violence and the excitement in the end, which is a decision I agree with. This is a tale of two cuts, and neither one is the perfect one. You get the badass, like, berserker scene in the surgery room where Michael goes in there with that giant knife and just makes chop suey out of everybody, including Dr. Wynn. You get the kind of crazy, confused laugh by Paul Rudd when he's trying to break the door open and Michael's coming after him. When he shoots Michael in the chest and he flies backwards and takes the gun with him. The end when he beats the shit out of him with that pipe. There's a lot of good scenes in this. But the story requires too many leaps of faith for me and too much suspension of disbelief, and in my opinion is not really that core to the original Halloween. I know that the novelization of the original Halloween has a lot of Celtic lore mixed into it. It has this Samhain, and it has Michael hearing a voice and feeling this urge, and it tries to explain it because it's a book. You can't get away with just saying, this happened, you figure it out, like a movie can. But I don't feel like that's the vibe that you really get off any of the other movies, barring number 5, that there's this kind of weird cult-driven thing. It's not hinted at anywhere else. Other than maybe the Samhain written on the school wall in Halloween 2. They don't bring Danielle Harris back. They kill the Jamie character off in the first act. It's edited weird. You have some edits that don't make no motherfucking sense. She gets thrown out the window, and then all of a sudden she's gone, and Loomis and Paul Rudd are standing down there, and they're like, he's like, I feel like I've been drugged. We have been drugged. That's the way they explained what happened. I suppose if you could enter it in the mindset that you're going to take it seriously, it could be a very good movie. But if you can't do that, and I don't think I can do that, then it turns out being kind of goofy. There's parts in it that you can wrap your arms around. There's parts in it that you can like. Or that I can like, rather. You're allowed to like whatever the fuck you want. There's parts in it that I like. There's parts in it that are fucking awesome. But as a whole, it's just not one of my favorites. Especially, I don't want to say especially the theatrical cut, because the ending of the theatrical cut is way better. Take away the charcoal briquettes and the ruins and Loomis being the new caretaker, etc. All that is garbage. But the producer's cut had more of the original score, had a little bit more character development, and the kills weren't so over the top unbelievable. The dad's head didn't explode when he got electrocuted. The dude's vertebrae didn't break through his skin when his neck got broken. And that's just more my cup of tea, more grounded in realism, more believable for me that this could actually happen to me. So that's I think that's about all I've got to say about Halloween 6. I know that that's going to ruffle some feathers, but so be it. Onward and upward. The next one, so we are almost into the top 5. This is going to be number 6, Rob Zombie's Halloween 1. So I know that there's people who are going to be pissed off that I put this above Halloween 6. It's just made better. It looks better. The music is better. The sound is better. The Michael is better. The mask is badass. He hasn't committed a lot of the cardinal sins as far as the portrayal of Michael, at least in the adult form, the shape, that he will down the road. It has the glaring flaw is that he decided to explore more of Michael's childhood and almost wanted us to sympathize with the way he was raised. He was brought up in an abusive household. His mom's a stripper. His stepdad beats him, sexually harasses his sister. His sister bullies him. He gets bullied at school. Like, of course he turns into a fucking psychopath. So he really got that wrong about the Michael Myers lore and what's effective about Michael Myers right out of the gate. And that's unfortunate. But the remainder of the movie, from when he's an adult onward, is primo stuff. Recreating the walk home with the girls with more of a modern feel. Malcolm McDowell was great as Loomis in this version. His take on Loomis wasn't horrible, although he was rendered a little bit useless, merely because in all the other Halloween movies with Loomis, Michael does not talk. There is almost no exposition on Michael's character, his history, his interests, his thoughts, nothing. He's a blank slate. So we rely on Loomis to be his mouthpiece. I almost refer to it as like a professional wrestler and a manager situation, except for the manager is building up the opponent. In professional wrestling, you build people up so that when you beat them, it makes you look better. That's the reason. You talk about how tough this guy is, so when you beat him, you look that much tougher. So in Rob Zombie's Halloween 1, we get a lot of Michael talking and Michael's behavior prior to him going mute and prior to him being an adult and prior to him donning masks permanently. And we get to witness a lot more of his behavior. So we're not as reliant on the Loomis character to sell us on the destructiveness of Michael Myers. We're not as reliant on the Loomis character to set the stage for the impending destruction. We've already seen everything that this guy can do from the get-go. So it's not a bad portrayal and it's not written horribly, but some of the decisions he made with the Michael character lessen the effect of the Loomis character. Sherry Moon Zombie wasn't bad casting as the mom. I thought she did a great job. I thought that she died at the right time in the film. It had its dramatic effect, and we're good there. The mask, I thought was awesome. I don't think that there was a single flaw with the mask. Even the way that he comes home and breaks it out of the floor and puts it on. The recreation with her babysitting Tommy was great. It was a little on the nose remake for me, but I think that he had to be within those confines. They don't overtly come out and show you in his first movie. But kind of the hidden theme of this is that he is not trying to kill Laurie. He's trying to like capture her and take her and make her be his friend. That's kind of his ultimate goal. She sees him get scared and runs, and then he's like trying to find a mouse inside the walls and mouse hunt, just destroying everything around. But if you really pay attention, he doesn't make an honest attempt to murder her, really. Even at the end when he tackles her out the window or off the balcony, I believe he does that to try to keep her from shooting him. His goal ultimately is for both of them to survive. So that's where it differs. So the two things that I really feel he could have done better is not give so much backstory, not make him come from the trailer trash piece of shit household, not make him, you're humanizing him too much, you're making too much sense. Like, this is an issue that we know exists in society, and we know how these people turn out. That is not the mystery that Michael Myers is. And then walking down the sister road again. So the twist he decided to put on it was that he's not trying to kill the sister. He wants to reunite with the sister. But it's still family garbage, and that's what we were getting sick of in the last one with the Cult of Thorn and passing the torch, and there's a curse, and hearing voices, and yada yada. But as a product, lighting, editing, cinematography, music, all that, it is one of the better ones. And it does stay pretty true to the original, other than the backstory. And we can't say necessarily that information wasn't always there in the backstory of the original Michael Myers. We didn't see it, though. He didn't really change that much about the adult Michael Myers, which is what we have to compare to from the John Carpenter version. So overall, that's one of my more go-to movies in the franchise. I mean, we're getting into the top 6, and we're starting to get into ones that are just straight my favorites. Like, it went from harsh criticism to like, I kind of like all these now. So, having said that, we're going to move on to the top 5. Whew, getting a little nervous to say this. Number 5, Halloween H2O. Boo, boo, so generic, boo. I get that. But as far as staying true to the original, it's right there. There's some fuckery with the mask. There's several different masks used. It's not the greatest in that regard. But we've got Laurie Strode back. The kills, the stalking, I think is all very Michael Myers-like. It's actually a studio movie. It looks good. It's shot well. It's lit well. The score at times is great. At other times, it's a little bit too Scream influenced, but that's a result of the era. Josh Hartnett and the teen characters, they could be better, but they're not horrible, and they're at least recognizable faces. That's Josh Hartnett. That's Michelle Williams. That's the kid from Jumanji. That's the girl from She's All That. LL Cool J's performance was spot on. Jamie Lee Curtis coming back as the sister in hiding with PTSD. There's not very many things that you can criticize this movie for, other than maybe it was a little bit too clean, a little bit too sanitized, a little bit too streamlined. But coming off the heels of Halloween 6 and the condition the franchise is in, it was the move to make, in my opinion. You might think it was safe, but it didn't overexpose itself by trying to get too complicated. It got in, got out. It made a solid Michael Myers movie, and they called it a day. The ending, if that had actually been the ending and Resurrection never existed, if there had never been another Halloween movie, Laurie Strode chopping off Michael Myers' head is probably the most fitting end you could have to the franchise. I don't think, other than maybe Loomis beating him to death and collapsing on him, it's a tough one there. Maybe if you could kind of intermingle those two, but I think that my favorite one would be her chopping off his head. It doesn't have a great fall feel, but they're also putting them in a new environment. And Jamie's now in California, or Laurie's now in California, so of course never feels like fall in California. They bring the nurse back from the first two. They interweave the Loomis character into the story post-mortem. They have a voice actor come in and try to replicate one of his speeches. I felt like it was one of the most genuine attempts to produce a good Halloween film. And if you're a fan of the franchise, you should always want there to be more movies. And the best odds you have for there to be more movies are if casual fans are interested in them. And Halloween H2O was a movie that I felt like casual fans could watch. People who weren't too into blood and gore, who didn't need to know a lot of the backstory and the lore. It sets the table for you. It's all pretty easy to follow along with. And it's just there. And that's basically why I think it was successful. It didn't... I always say more mystery, less history. It didn't overcomplicate things with trying to add too much motive in. But also they were going back to the basics and basically making a follow-up to Halloween 2. And as a result, they had a motive built in where he was trying to kill his sister. So they just kind of continued along those lines. There was a subtle but weak attempt to pass the torch along to Josh Hartnett, I think. But that never really went anywhere. And because the Laurie Strode character lived anyway, she, of course, is going to be carrying the mantle going forward. The Josh Hartnett character, though, is one of the weirder characters that got just left out after that. If you think about it, because most of the movies, Michael is pursuing family members. Even in that movie, he knows that she has a son. That would be a family member. If he killed her, that would be who he pursues next. And in Resurrection, they just, nope, he killed Laurie. Now he's just going to wander off in the woods and go home, eat some dogs. What is this life for? Okay. We are to the top 4, and I need a bong hit refresher. I feel like I'm running out of steam here. Might be mumbling a bit. Maybe I'm not making the best sense. What the fuck? Okay, so now we are up to number 4 on the list, which, coincidentally enough, is Halloween 4. So, this had the potential to be one of the best. And obviously it is. I have it in almost the top third. It's number 4 out of 11. There's only 3 movies above it. Considering the flaws it does have, that's pretty good. Because there's... Even H2O, for an example, is a lot cleaner made than Halloween 4. Rob Zombie's Halloween is a lot cleaner made than Halloween 4. His Halloween 2 is a lot cleaner made. Resurrection is a lot cleaner made. But when it comes to the criteria of staying true to the original and feeling like John Carpenter's Halloween, this one perhaps is one of the best. It is one of the best. And that's why it carries the day over the H2Os and the Rob Zombie's Halloweens of the world. Just because, even more so than the original, it really feels like fall. It creates that small town fall feel. The Rachel character is very Laurie Strode-like. She's a very girl next door, middle America teenager, typical problems, boy issues, school, babysitting, relatable. You've got Danielle Harris, one of the more remarkable kid actors of our time, putting on a great performance as this orphaned, parentless, kind of ostracized little kid who is somehow psychically connected to this psycho killer Michael Myers that she calls the boogeyman. The kills are pretty good. The Loomis in it is awesome. The gas station scene where he has that face off with Michael Myers is one of the best scenes in the entire franchise. The car ride with the preacher when he's singing and Loomis takes a pull off the flask and has himself a grin. That's all great stuff. It's what contributes to it feeling like it's close to the original. Now, the issues it has, there's massive continuity issues that pull me out of it. And I know that isn't necessarily part of the canon or lore, doesn't affect the story. But when we're talking about a whole product, I consider these things. Those are issues that you don't see in like H2. Well, in H2O you do a little bit with his mask, I'm not gonna lie. But in like Rob Zombie's Halloween, you're not gonna see makeup continuity issues. Anyway, so Halloween 4. Loomis's scar changes from one cut to another, or one edit to another. It goes from looking like a boiled egg to looking like he's got a little scribble of gel pen on his face. And it's within the same scene. It switches back and forth. Michael's mask looks like shit. It's way too bleached out white. It's more featureless than it needs to be. The hair is the wrong color. He looks a bit frumpy and goofy. I have trouble taking him seriously with the look on his face. Then you have the scene where there are multiple people posing as Michael. Loomis almost tries to shoot one of them. And they all have the exact right mask. How did they know where to get it? How did they know he was back? And that contributes to the idea that there may be a fake or a copycat Michael, right? Then later in the school, we have this kind of weird edit where Michael goes from being like down the stairs to being up the stairs and around the corner inexplicably for no reason. And that almost implies that maybe it's a different person. And then you have the scene where he's wearing the wrong mask entirely. He's wearing a mask with peach or pink skin, the face is pink, and the hair is blonde. He looks like some kind of sedated Ivan Drago. And he steps up, grabs Loomis, and throws him out the window. So as your brain is trying to process all this shit, you're like, well, why the fuck would his mask be different for 30 seconds? That must not be the same guy. When in the story it is intended to be the same guy. It's issues like that that make this a little bit lower on the list than maybe it should be. Is just not of quite high enough quality. What else can I say about Halloween 4? Sounds like nothing. Okay, now we are into the top 3. Bum, bum, bum. So, number 3, Halloween 2018. Oh no, what did he do? You can probably extrapolate and figure out what the top 2 are going to be based off what's left, but Halloween 2018. This may be recency biased, I'll admit, but I don't think so, because I just threw on this movie for a few minutes the other day and became enthralled again and found myself having to shut it, like telling myself, you got to shut this shit off and get stuff done. You can't just sit here and watch this whole movie. It just sucked me right back in. The rewatchability is really there. It is a lot of fan service, and it borders on too much fan service, and that's probably why it didn't crack the top two. It could have been higher on this list if not for a couple issues like that. I'm so familiar with what happens in the movies that I don't really, if you get the opportunity to make a new Halloween movie, I don't want you to spend a third to half the time just re-showing me shit that was in other Halloween movies. I could go watch those. I don't need some kind of compilation service here. I want you to give me new stuff to be added to the library that is Michael Myers. So they came very close to crossing that line for me. They straddled it. It was getting to a point where I was like, if they do one more fucking thing that's exactly what they did in another movie, I might get upset. Like, it was getting there. But they didn't. They pulled back just at the right moment. There was a bit of comedy in there that I didn't mind. It felt more lighthearted. They chose to ignore the original Halloween 2 and make this just a sequel to John Carpenter's Halloween. And in the process of that, they were trying to go back to the core of Michael Myers, which is he's not motivated by anything. Laurie Strode isn't his sister. He just likes to kill people. And it's like, okay, I get that. But then they bring Jamie Lee Curtis in to play the Laurie Strode character, and that's who he goes after. And it really appears that the story is lending itself towards him going after her granddaughter, Andy Matichak, in the future, in which case we're just continuing the family storyline. So I understand somewhat their decision to remove the familial connection, but I don't understand their decision to execute it the way they did and basically walk the exact same path that you would walk if she was his sister. It's like if you're walking down the sidewalk towards the grocery store, clearly walking towards the grocery store. It's the only thing you could be walking towards while announcing I'm not walking to the grocery store the whole time. Like, if you're doing it the exact same way effectively, does it matter that you've announced that you're not? Like, saying that she's not his sister but then proceeding with the movie and the movie playing out exactly the same way it would have if she was his sister. Just why even add that in there to begin with? Anywho, I really feel like they could have just made it a sequel to Halloween 2. She's still his sister. It's almost the exact same movie. And you don't have this kind of argument for no reason. They got the mask. They nailed the fucking mask. The James Jude Courtney as Michael was on point. They had that great tracking shot. There's some pretty good kills, but it's not over the top gore. Some of the characters are actually interesting. You actually care about if they live or die. The little black kid is fucking hilarious. The score is great. The way it's shot is great. The way it's edited is great. The way it's cast is great. It doesn't have a lot of glaring flaws. It just has some areas where maybe it could have done a little better. I wasn't a big fan of the Sartain character. I kind of get that you need a liaison between the hospital setting and Michael and whoever is going to be there, in this case the podcasters. But the turning him into this guy with questionable motivations who kills Hawkins, who's one of the best characters in the movie. That was kind of a waste of Hawkins. But he kills Hawkins and then he puts on Michael's mask. And you have kind of this split second where you think that there's going to be a copycat situation going on. We didn't really need that in there. But it did make you really happy when he gets his head stomped out later. But the head stomping was one of the more over-the-top kills in the movie. And it took me out of it a little bit because I didn't buy it. I like to see shit. I would rather see you show me something where I go, fuck, that's probably how that really looks, rather than his head explodes like a watermelon and me going, oh, there's no fucking way. I would much rather you try to make an attempt to show me what it would, the reality of it. I think that's harder than just, we're going to explode everything and it'll be cool. But that's what, I mean, this is picking hairs at this point. The complaints are so few. Yeah, I really can't wait to see what they do with the follow-up. I actually think that I might make a video just talking about possible ideas and where I'd like to see them go with the 2020 Halloween and possible title ideas, because like I was talking about before, we're so fucked up with the different titles in this franchise. The fact that we didn't just number them all and we started mixing in the H2Os and stuff because we got on alternate timelines. The fact that the remakes have the exact same title as the originals other than the Rob Zombie or John Carpenter caveat. The fact that Halloween 3 isn't even a Michael Myers movie. Just the chronology and the sequencing of these, if you're a layperson, is very fucked up. And I actually saw some people make a good argument that, because what I've always wanted is a Halloween 3 that is actually have Michael Myers in it. Like, that is the if you look at the whole franchise, I know it's kind of petty, but that is like the golden unicorn that we've never got, is a Halloween 3 with Michael Myers in it. So kind of my wet dream of this whole remake stint is that we're going to get a Halloween 3 with Michael Myers in it. But after hearing that argument, it kind of made me realize that might never happen. And they might go the route that the UFC was going with for a while. It's Halloween Knockout, Halloween Vengeance, Halloween Box Boy Fort Making. I don't fucking know. Halloween Shattered. So that was it. Number 3, Halloween 2018. So those of you that have been keeping track of or crossing off your lists know which ones are left. But anyway, I will proceed. Number 2 is Halloween 2, coincidentally enough. So we had Halloween 4 come in at number 4, and we have Halloween 2 come in at number 2. I bet that people are going to disagree with that one adamantly. But you have the fact that it's basically seamlessly stitched together with Halloween 1. It looks and feels exactly the same. I know the mask is slightly different. I don't really fault them for that. It was the exact same mask, and I bet just looking at it in person, since it had been 3 years since they even made the other movie, they probably couldn't tell it looked different. They're probably like, yeah, it's the same mask. We're going to use that mask. And Dick Warlock has a bigger head than Nick Castle does, so it's stretched out a little bit over his face. I think that it just gives it a different look, a different feel, and it adds to that lore of the ever-changing Michael appearance. I really don't look at it in a negative light at all. I just think it makes it distinct. It's just, oh, that's the Halloween 2 Michael. He looks different than the Halloween 1 Michael, subtly, but not unforgivably. So a lot of people hate it because of that. I won't say that I prefer it. I won't dare say I like Halloween 2 Michael better than Halloween 1 Michael. But it's probably in my top 3 or 4. I don't mind it at all. And yeah, so that's basically it for the Michael. You have a continuation of the story. Although it was written begrudgingly by John Carpenter, it was written by John Carpenter. He does a little bit of like a toddler tantrum act where he doesn't want to do shit, so he just does a half-assed job on it instead. Okay? So a lot of people claim that that's what he did with Halloween 2, and I can see a few pieces of lazy writing in there, but at its core, it was still from the creator himself. So I think that it needs to be held in a higher regard because of that as well. So you've got all these elements that make it almost permanently interlinked or melded to the original. They're almost one movie. Of course, you can separate them very easily. You don't have to watch them together. But when you connect them, it's like, God damn, it's seamless. These just perfectly go together. It looks and feels like it's the same night. Michael is different, but not enough to where it actually makes you notice. You're not sitting here going, why does Michael look like that? Or why does Michael do that? Part of that is helped by we didn't get much Michael in Halloween 1. It was very theater of the mind in Halloween 1. You're in the hospital setting, so that's one of my theories for how to help make a sequel effective, is putting it in an entirely new setting. Like they tried to do with Jason Takes Manhattan, except for they didn't have any Manhattan in the movie, and we were already 7 movies deep of him being in the woods, so it was really a drastic change. But so you take Michael and you put him in the hospital. He's still pursuing Laurie. She's in the hospital. She's banged up. She has been drugged up. She gets knocked out, and she's scared to death. And Michael just slowly starts working his way through this hospital, pursuing her. And she's half in it, half out of it, all foggy. It looks like she's looking through glasses with Vaseline smeared all over them. You have more classic kills than even in the original. Nothing's ever going to beat the Bob kill for me. But you have Lance Guest slipping in the blood and getting it all over in his fro. You have the surprise finger up the butt nurse getting lifted 4 feet off the floor with the scalpel. There's the kid who has the razor blade in his mouth. It's not even really related to the story. It's just kind of this creepy Halloweenish element to add in there. Some of the shots, like when Michael comes around the corner outside and that red light's shining down on him and he's standing there staring at her across the parking lot. It's a badass. It's like, I know I have it ranked number 2, but it is so close to being number 1. And that's a personal preference thing for me too. It is very close to number 1. It is not far behind at all. They did a little bit of a kind of disco thing with the original theme and rounded it out as a song is concerned. And it makes me want to go running on a fucking treadmill every time I hear it. The opening scene where that pumpkin spreads apart and there's a skull underneath it is the best opening in the whole franchise to me. That's my favorite opening. I love the when the first bit of new footage, because of course Halloween 2 starts with the ending of Halloween 1, then we go through that scene with the pumpkin and the credits, and then we pick up with new footage, and it's Michael walking around in alleyways behind houses and shit, wounded, confused, looking for a weapon. I love the look and feel of that, because that's the kind of shit that makes you scared to take the trash outside. That's real fear. Not magic and ghouls and fucking Cult of Thorn. Just afraid to take the garbage outside because some dude, just a dude, who for some reason decided to go psycho is wandering around out there. That's the shit that gets me. Yes. And there was an opportunity there for there to be a totally different offshoot sequel that just stayed in that realm. You've got where he follows Jamie to the hospital in this one, and that turns out great. I love the way that the stuff works out in the hospital. Even the fact that they decided to have a kid walk by with a ghetto blaster and run into Michael, and that's how Michael hears that she's been taken to the hospital and knows to go there. Just the fact that they even knew enough of their story and how this was going to fit together to put that in there. I love that kind of shit. But the it would be hard to have them both play out in the same storyline. But when he's walking around at the beginning of that, he's, looking around the corner and sees the sheriff and sees Loomis yelling and they're searching for him and he's trying to run away. He's not running, but he's trying to evade them. He sneaks into the Elrod house and steals her knife and she screams because there's blood on her cutting board. Then he goes over and kills that other girl. That little kind of segment there, that scene, there could have been an entire sequel that was just that. And I guess it would have to have come after the hospital sequel. Just because story timeline wise, of course, Laurie's going to go to the hospital immediately. Anyway, I'm getting deep off into the weeds here. But I really enjoyed that opening part. And they're using the Panavision, and it looks like it was filmed the same, like it looks like the exact same movie. Yep. Bud, Amazing Grace, come sit on my face. We get more Tiggle Bitties. We get the nice hot tub death. There's a lot of good shit. I guess you could say the flaws are the mask. I guess I have to put that in a flaw category, although it doesn't bother me really at all. I like it. But it has some filler in there. And the continuity story-wise, scene by scene, doesn't always make sense, or I'm trying to figure out how to put this. It seems like it could be shuffled around and wouldn't really change the outcome of the movie at all. There's not a lot of rhyme or reason to the order that people are getting killed in. We don't really understand the layout of the hospital to know the urgency of the situation when it concerns Laurie or anybody else for that matter. We get little hints of it with, like, we see him walk by on the camera, then we see somebody else walk by on the camera, so we know they're in the same place. But this entire time, you don't really understand if Michael's closing in, if he's zigzagging, if he's circling around the edges, if he's beating around the bush, if he's scared to lick pussy, so he eats around the tush. The first one had that in spades because it was two houses across the street from one another, and we got to see him on the periphery with Annie, slowly moving in, then he finally kills her, then he's across the street. Now he waits for Douche and Dildo to show up, he kills them, and then he waits for Annie or for Laurie to come over to him. We have a sense of the scene and the proximity the entire time and the relative danger. We know what Laurie's walking into when she goes into that house. In the hospital, the layout is just very abstract. We don't know how many floors this fucking thing has. We know it must have multiple floors because she gets in an elevator at some point. It appears to have almost nobody working there and have very few patients. They called the doctor in off the country club to come in and deal with Laurie. So it does have holes there, but at its core, it is right up there with the best of the best. Halloween 2 is better than a lot of other franchises' best entry. I'll put it that way. Halloween 2 is better than a lot of the first attempts for a lot of franchises. So, of course, in the first spot, number one best movie in the Halloween franchise, that only leaves the original Halloween 1 from 1978, written and directed by John Carpenter. You probably saw that coming a mile away. It was, if not for those issues I just kind of mentioned, I like the overall look and feel and idea of Halloween 2 better, I would say. That's probably going to piss some people off. But it has more of those kind of filler flaws, less continuity to scene by scene kills and where we are and how we're progressing in the the sense that the walls are closing in around you. You don't get that as much from the second one. So the first one has to be number one. It's the OG. It started it all. It gives the least detail about Michael Myers, like I said before. More mystery, less history, and that allows you to contribute your own thoughts and motives to it. It makes it scarier than perhaps they could ever make it for you. And it makes it that way scalably. If you make somebody have a certain motive, that's only going to be scary to people who are afraid of people with that motive. If you make somebody have no motive, it leaves it wide open for anybody to be afraid of. I don't know what this weird world is I just created where people are afraid of certain people based off their motives and not, but maybe it exists. Anyway, the having no motive for Michael is awesome. The fact that stuff like this didn't exist before this movie, just a guy in a mask, like it was an absurd idea to a lot of people at the time. The way that they created all these kind of happy accidents because of budgetary restraints, and they innovated on the spot, and they had everybody working as a team. The actors and actresses wore their own clothes. The fact that Carpenter had the wherewithal to spend his money on what really counted, and that being the Panavision, the proper post-production work, Donald Pleasence. Those three things is where he spent the bulk of his funds for this picture on, and it paid off in spades, because while it is 100% a low-budget horror movie, it really does not have that feel. It feels very smooth and polished for a 1978 low-budget picture. And of course, it's the one that gained all the momentum, that had legs, spread nationwide, resulted in a sequel, resulted in the Jason Voorhees and the Ghost Faces of the world, just kind of spawned it all. The way that those stars aligned, and you create a star out of Jamie Lee Curtis, you create, I don't know if you could say create a star, but you create this legendary, iconic, supernatural fucking figure, The Shape, Michael Myers. You create this legendary score that is, to this day, the best score in a horror franchise, period. People try to remake it, they try to reboot it, they try to come up with their own thing, they try to be influenced by this or that. The original, well, I actually like the version from the beginning of part 2 better, but at its core it's the exact same thing. That John Carpenter bum 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 bum, it gets your gears moving every single time. I drank my fucking fruit juice today. I'm running on all 8 cylinders. The mask. The way they did damn near everything right. It's almost weird to see something like that happen. Normally you would see a movie where you're like, oh, well, they got this and that right, but they fucked up all the other stuff, and then they got this and that right. And then you'd have a movie like Halloween come along that takes elements from all those and figures out how to combine them and congeal them in a way that makes sense. But no, they're just coming up with shit on the fly, and maybe we'll try this and we'll do that, and who cares, it's low budget and we're just making to make a little bit of money. And then it took off for the stars like a fucking rocket. Yeah, I think the best thing about it is that it didn't explain too much. It just didn't. And that leads people, it's like believing in Bigfoot, almost. It makes people search for an answer that they're never actually going to get. It's not actually there to be had, but they're going to try to figure it out. And they're going to argue about it with their friends, and they're going to watch the shit over and over again and look for clues. And that's where almost all the sequels fuck up, is they start adding too much detail in. They start trying to paint too clear of a picture of Michael. And it becomes less interesting to you over time, because the answer that they give never seems to be satisfying. I don't know that it ever could be. But that's the beauty of it, is that it's left open to interpretation in that way. Some of the other great major players, like Scream is fucking awesome, but it has no lasting lore. There's no conversation to be had afterwards in regard to the motives. Or Billy and Stu confess and they're dead at the end of the movie. You know exactly why they did everything, because they told you. And you're not, there's, like, it's over. As a story, that is totally complete. Whereas with Michael, you're not given a lot of detail. You have no idea why he started doing this. He doesn't talk at all. And at the end, he inexplicably gets up and disappears after being shot a bunch of times. And there's no answers. So then everybody wants to talk about it. And if I had to pick one thing that is the reason that Michael Myers is a bigger icon than any other character in horror, and that Halloween is the #1 franchise in all of horror, it would be that. It's because at its core, at the beginning, we have no fucking idea why this is happening. Jason Voorhees, he's killing for mommy. His mom killed for him because he died. Chucky is a serial killer inside of a kid's doll because of voodoo. I Know What You Did Last Summer, he got hit by the car. Like, Billy and Stu, like, we have motives for all of them. We have too much insight into their humanity and their character, instead of being able to apply that ourselves to a blank canvas, which oddly enough has a pale white emotionless face and the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes. That's going to conclude the countdown, the ranking of the Halloween franchise. So, just for a recap, we have coming in at number 1, coincidentally enough, Halloween 1 from 1978. Number 2, Halloween 2 from 1981. Number 3, Halloween from 2018. Number 4, Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. Number 5, Halloween H2O. Number 6, Rob Zombie's Halloween 1. Number 7, Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers. Number 8, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. Number 9, The Untuckening. Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers. Number 10, Halloween Resurrection, sometimes referred to as H8, although it doesn't fit into the storyline in that fashion. And then honorable mention, coming in at number 11, doesn't really belong on the list, shouldn't be a Halloween movie at all, Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. So, that is the recap, that is the breakdown. Hopefully that was somewhat understandable and cohesive. That was all off the top of the head. I ranked them, I wrote down my list, the order that I rank them in, and I just ran down it, and everything I said about each one I was thinking of on the spot. So hopefully I was able to get out everything that I had intended to when I set out to record this, and I didn't leave anything on the table. Hopefully there wasn't too much mumbling and back-talking and flip-flopping. If so, so be it. I appreciate you guys listening. Catch me at Avarice Podcast, YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, Facebook, iTunes, all that good shit. Like, subscribe, comment, all that good shit. until the next time, this is Devin signing off and saying, be easy.